So I'm going to do something a little unconventional at this stage. I'm going to actually invite Meredith and Jessica to just join me on the stage. I know she's looking as though to say, what is happening now? So as they join me, so earlier at lunch, we know that 50 is BNSI, 125 is ASTM, but my lovely colleagues from ANSI also sponsored what we ate just now. So if you enjoyed it, say yay. If you didn't, say boo. Yeah, I'm hearing yeas and boos, yeas and boos. But thank you to the American National Standards Institute for your continued support. And we love you and the family as well. Shall I ask you to present something, perhaps, Meredith, in your expertise?
We are kickstarting this on climate change, so we better waste no more time because we're getting
All right.
1.5 degrees as we speak.
Thank you. So we had a wonderful lunch and we will resume, but thank you so much. We'll now invite the Master of Ceremonies to continue for the second session, Mr. Fabian Scott.
Hi, okay, this one is working better. So, how we are going to approach the conclusion of the final session is we will invite those panelists from session 2 who weren't able to present, Mr. Jose Trejo from Trinidad and Tobago Bureau of Standards, Mr. Damien Catlin from the Barbados National Oil Company Limited. Could you please, gentlemen, make your way to the podium? We have our discussion set up here for you. So if the presenter could make the presentation available for Mr. Trejo. Mr. Trejo will go first. He will speak on Climate Change Action Plan, and then Mr. Catlin will follow. And we will open then our third and final session for, over here by me, that's fine. We will open the third and final session for a discussion as we have planned. And so we will take the session that route, hopefully to finish at 2:45 p.m. on the dot so we can make our preparations for the bus tour. So, Mr. Trejo, you have a cordless mic before you. You can, let's see if it's on. Can you see the screen from there? So we'll have Mr. Trejo presenting his action plan. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's never a good idea to do a presentation after lunch. But I see my colleagues are getting coffee, so we're good to go. Well, thanks again for the opportunity to present on behalf of the Trinidad and Tobago Bureau of Standards. TDBS doesn't have an action plan, but it does have some national and development initiatives that it's working on as it relates to climate change. So just for our purposes, and I think there's no convincing to be done in terms of the importance of quality infrastructure to climate change, the importance of standards and conformity assessment to climate change is important. For regulators, for the public and private sectors, it's important to embed quality infrastructure into a national setting to the benefit of both the public and the private sector, and ultimately for the benefit of the consumer, to ensure that goods and services that we produce are in tandem with these regulations and that they conform to these regulations. So just briefly, the Twin Islands of Trinidad and Tobago is just to the north of South America. Uh, it's the main economy for Trinidad is oil and gas, although there is a lot of momentum at the national level to diversify the economy. It's a small country of 1.4 million people. In the context of climate change, I think it's important to understand the guiding documents for Trinidad and Tobago. So at this present time, one of the main drivers for national development is Trinidad and Tobago's National Development Strategy. This National Development Strategy is based on its Horizon 2030. There's also the Climate Change Policy of 2011, which is currently being revised. We also have our Carbon Reduction Strategy of 2015. And of course, this is the National Determined Contribution Implementation Plan. The objective of the implementation plan as it relates to the NDCs is really for three targeted areas, starting with power generation, industry, and transportation. The objective to reduce emissions by 15%. There are various areas in terms of the targeted priorities, mitigation areas for each of the different sectors. For industry, I think there's 4 for power generation, 6 for industry, and 7 for transportation. So key mitigation areas is for Trinidad and Tobago is based on energy efficiency, energy conservation, electric vehicles, energy conservation, what have you. The response from Trinidad and Tobago is really in the area of energy efficiency in buildings. The building code is currently being revised. There is the revision to the TTS ISO energy management systems at this present time. And you may have heard Mr. Fulgent speak about the energy efficiency labeling scheme for air conditioners, LEDs, CFLs, and refrigerators. And then there's also our initiatives to revise our electrical codes. Again, we may have heard this morning a little bit about the centers of excellence. Trinidad and Tobago participated along with Jamaica, Belize, and I think it's St. Vincent and the Grenadines on the CFLs. So there has been a significant investment in terms of the testing. So it is now testing for CFLs and LEDs in Trinidad and Tobago. Key areas of standardization for us, as I mentioned, would be our electrical codes, the energy efficiency labeling scheme, and TTBS remains active in the ISO community in terms of the environmental, TC for environmental, for environment, for governance. That's another good one that we have been involved in. And this is just a summary of some of the projects that TTBS has been involved. As I mentioned to you, we are engaging in I think one of the main ones that we would like to emphasize is that our national standardization strategy is currently being revised. And we're working very closely with our partners in the Environment and Management Authority. We're working with the Public Utilities Commission in terms of embedding and rolling out standards that are relevant for the national setting as it relates to energy efficiency. The centers of excellence, as I mentioned to you, we keep as well in our participation, as I mentioned to you, in the ISO. The benefits of our participation in the TAP project with CrossQ has led us to this point where we have invested in the energy efficiency lab, and we're now testing. And that, in a sense, gives a little summary of where we are focusing our efforts in. I mean, net zero is important for TTBS, electric vehicles, as you heard this morning, ensuring that the building codes are in line with the CARICOM Regional Energy Efficiency Building Codes, our energy efficiency labeling scheme, which we are piloting. We hope to get off the ground before the end of this year. So that, in a nutshell, gives an idea of what the TTBS is doing now. our plan is to try and engage our stakeholders so that at some point, and I'm speaking to Corey here in terms of the action plan, that we can develop that action plan for TTBS as it relates to climate change, a more consolidated, more coordinated effort as it relates to climate change, working with our stakeholders in the regulating community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Trejo, for that detailed information. First, I think we all should congratulate him. I hope he doesn't mind me saying he has recently have a new appointment as the Executive Director of Trinidad and Tobago Bureau of Standards. So congratulations. But a bit about him, in case you didn't know, Mr. Trejo was a Belizean national, having spent the last 22 years as a public officer serving the people of Belize. Previously, he was an economist at the Central Bank of Belize, and I love economists. I love to debate with you guys. He holds a Master of Arts degree in International Affairs with a concentration in Development Economics. He has served as an adjunct professor in economics at the University of the West Indies School of Continuing Studies in Belize, the University of Belize, and Galen University. He also worked with several ministries in Belize, including Natural Resources and the Environment, Trade, Commerce and Industry, Finance, Economic Development, Agriculture, Food Security, and Enterprise. From 2015 to 2017, he serves as the chairman of the CARICOM Regional Organization for Standards and Quality, and from 2007 to 2023 as the director of the Belize Bureau of Standards. One of the things I note, and particularly for Trinidad, is that you guys are working towards setting up, as you said, a center of excellence, where you will be given some type of verification specifically for lighting products, right, to confirm evidence that indeed these lighting products are consuming whatever amount of electricity that the manufacturer or the assembler says that they do. I would like to hear from your point of view the significance of this investment, this institutional capacity that you're building, not only to the region, but to Trinidad and Tobago, seeing as the culture is different, and I'll need to explain this to the audience. Trinidad has a competitive advantage where the electricity tariff is about 6 or 8 cents US per kilowatt hour, and I'll give you an example. For Barbados, we are about 25 or 26 cents per kilowatt hour. So because of that, behavioral patterns are different. You would find that people in Trinidad and Tobago may or may not be so conscious about conservation as here where the prices will be higher. So having this new on the way to accreditation lab, tell me what you believe the impact would be when you can have that verification capacity there in country to say to not only people in Trinidad, but the rest of us in the Caribbean who will possibly be sending our lighting products there for the same verification. Tell us how important that is for Trinidad and Tobago and the rest of the Caribbean.
Well, as I mentioned, it's a significant investment. And I think that with any investment of this magnitude, whether it's in terms of conformity assessment or metrology, it has to be sustained, and there has to be a return on the investment. And so the idea behind setting up these centers of excellence, as we've heard in the discussions, there are limited resources in the region. And so building the capacity in, say, Jamaica and Trinidad allows us to be able to not only offer services for the national setting, but also for the regional setting. So for us, it is to sustain the effort. Sustaining the effort, not in the sense just for meeting bottom lines, but also to ensure that we embed energy efficiency, awareness, and sensitization across the stakeholders. So to change the mindset of the consumer, regardless if you're in a high income, low income, middle income economy where you have that opportunity, where the rates are different. The idea is to, no matter what, to change that mindset so that at the end of the day, there are gains to be had. So I think that that's one of the main things that I would like to emphasize, that yes, it's a capital investment, but there's a two-way street in terms of making sure there's an inroad with the consumer and stakeholder in terms of reducing and understanding the end goal, which is to lower the carbon footprint, lower emissions, and meet these targets that we talk about in the COP, talk about in national setting, in the regional setting.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trejo, for your presentation. We will move on to our final panelist, Mr. Damien Catlin. He is the Group Health, Safety, Security, Environmental, and Quality Manager at the Barbados National Oil Company. He has over 15 years of experience in the implementation of integrated management systems and industrial health and safety, with the last 10 years spent in the oil and gas sector. With the background of a Bachelor's of Science in Marine Biology from the Florida Institute of Technology and a Master of Science in Natural Resource and Environmental Management from the University of the West Indies, he has spent his career applying the principles of sustainable development to the industrial and energy sectors within Barbados. This is to promote economic competitiveness while maintaining our island's nation ecosystem. So I invite Mr. Catlin now to deliver his presentation on carbon neutrality. Mr. Catlin.
Thank you. Good afternoon, all. First, let me thank BNSI for inviting the Barbados National Oil Company to speak. It is not often that oil and gas companies are invited to speak at climate change conferences. We are not viewed in the best light as it relates to this. But I hope that at the end of our presentation, my presentation, that you see that you would view us the same way we view ourselves, in that we play an extremely large role in spearheading the movement towards carbon neutrality and net zero. We view ourselves at the Barbados National Oil as the tip of the spear, really, for Barbados. I'm going to be speaking from a different point of view than the majority of the speakers. Most of you all will be speaking from a policy perspective. I will be speaking from the implementation of policy that you all have implemented, where the rubber meets the road, essentially. All right, see if we can get this working. All right, so before I go, let me give you a brief overview of the Barbadian context. A little known fact in the Caribbean is that Barbados does, in fact, have an oil and gas production industry. We do produce it. It's, exercise my Spanish, muy poquito. We do have approximately 400 barrels of crude per day production. In 2022, we would have produced about 327 million cubic feet of natural gas. All of the crude is exported off island for refining, and the natural gas is utilized on island in the industrial, residential, and commercial sectors. So the map would show you where the oil fields are to the southeast of the island, in the center and south of the island, where the crude is exported offshore and liquid fuels are imported and stored at another one of our sister companies, the terminal. We also have the natural gas, which, as I said, we utilize onshore. As I said, it is of critical influence in the tourism sector. Almost all of our natural gas is used for thermal combustion, so literally direct cooking or on boilers and whatnot for the industry. Right? And it supports cooking for the residential sector as well. The Barbadian economy is based on fossil fuels currently. The electrical generation is almost 80%, 90% based on heavy fuel oil that we at Barbados National Oil also import and provide to the Barbados Light and Power. They do have some diesel and kerosene generating capacity, but the vast majority of it is based on heavy fuel oil. All right? How do we change that paradigm? At Barbados National Oil, we have taken the energy policy that a previous speaker, Ron, would have spoken about. That has some very ambitious goals of 100% renewable by 2030 We are in 2023, for those that haven't noticed, so the time is short, essentially. How are we going to get there? So we at Barbados National have taken the view, we're going to move from traditional fossil fuels to the first step on that shift will be towards low carbon fuels. In our context, we've chosen natural gas, and as a subset of that, liquefied natural gas, LNG, as one of our means of getting there. Now, this slide represents a straight line continuum towards 100% renewable, but the reality of the matter is that we will have many stops along the way. We will be present at all. It is not going to be a continuum. Our energy mix in the future is going to encompass both low carbon fossil fuels as well as the renewables and whatnot. That is not necessarily just from a fiscal standpoint, but also from a resiliency standpoint. Having a mix in a small island state is probably the best movement forward. So as it relates to LNG, what we've done is that we've promoted the use of natural gas on island to the point that even though our fields are mature and production is decreasing, we've supplemented that with importing LNG in the form of ISO containers that we regasify. Barbados was the first country within the region, the wider region actually, including the Americas, to have small regasification facility built and commissioned. Jamaica has moved far ahead of us by now, but we got there before them. We put that in. We beat them once in a race. To that being said, our industry has also taken that on board. So some commercial entities are changing their boilers out from diesel and fossil fuel and switching to natural gas. In March of this year, we were the first country in the region to successfully bunker a cruise ship with LNG at the Bridgetown port. That is a big step forward in that it shows the cruise industry, which is a massive entity and critical to the performance of tourism industry in the entire region, that Barbados and by extension some of the other islands will be a viable source for them to meet their independent greening goals, because the marine sector does have some quite stringent goals that they will have to meet in the future. So that was hailed as a success, and we hope that it will not be a one-off, and we'll have that moving forward into the next cruise season. A big part of it is waste reduction. We view moving towards a paperless society from a personal standpoint. What we've done is that we are promoting the use of digitization from a waste reduction standpoint. We're trying to get rid of paper. We're also using automation as a way of reducing waste in that the field, a lot of by definition, our operations are remote. It entails movement of a lot of vehicles, entities, but if you can digitize and automate a lot of our processes, you are reducing our carbon footprint simply by removing the need to transport oneself between facilities and whatnot. So we're improving the automation of said facilities, and that automation we are powering via renewable sources, so sunlight, PV. We've also, where possible, changed our fleet to electric vehicles, which we will then power by PV in the future by PV and battery storage that we put down. And a large part is that we're also reducing the waste of the island. It's not something that we have promoted in the public eye, but quietly what Barbados National has done is we've only implemented within the last 3 months or so, we've removed about 1,500 barrels of used oil from the waste stream. So all mechanics used oil for vehicular maintenance, and they know is redirected instead of to landfills. It's redirected to the national oil company, and we utilize it in our processes. The next step would be biofuels, which I'll speak to a little further down. We actually liaised with the BNSI in getting standards, codifying the national standards as it relates to biodiesel, B10, B100, what it means, and the testing regime that will cover it, because as in the oil and gas sector, we are heavily codified. A lot of our products, we have to ensure they meet rigorous standards before we can put them out in the public. So our movement towards biofuels had to be based on sound standards and adoption of existing standards and apply to the Barbadian climate. Right? And then finally, your renewables, which I'll speak to as well, which is PV, biogas. I feel like I've left out some battery storage, but I'll get to those. So, solar PV. We have installed, this is Barbados National Oil alone, I'm not speaking nationally, we've installed 6.7 megawatts of PV panels. Unfortunately, because of the Barbadians would understand there's a backlog as it relates to the government and actually getting them connected to the grid. We've only had about a megawatt connected to the grid, but we currently have 6.7 megawatts installed and awaiting connection. Of that 6.7 megawatts, 1 megawatt of it is at residential level. We would have put out a project that we significantly reduce the cost of PV to the nation by purchasing it, but by using our bulk purchasing abilities, we reduce the cost to the consumer about 50%, the installation of PVs. And that excited the market and has driven the market now to be a lot more competitive and readily accessible to the average Barbadian. We've also installed about 1.7, if my memory serves correct. Oh, it's not showing. 1.7 of commercial and about 3.9 of utility scale. When they say commercial, I'm talking large rooftops, warehouses, car parks, that kind of thing. And utility is we do have some solar farms within our oil field. I would have had think you can have, so right now you can come into our oil field and you're going to see a very eclectic mix of pumping units surrounded by PV panels. So we do not believe that it is an exclusive thing. They can exist together, and we have shown that they can exist together. So we do have quite a large number of solar farms within our oil field, especially at our abandoned wells, where wells have gone through their life cycle. Instead of leaving them as brownfield, we've converted them into solar farms and continue to get life out of the application. We've also installed what we call agri-solar, and we're trying to push that one out to farmers. We are a land scarce country, so we recognize that to put solar farms is a waste of potentially good arable land. So what we've done, we've developed agri-solar technology which would allow you to grow under the solar panels. That's something now that we're working on and pushing quite extensively and getting some traction with the agricultural sector. We're working with the Ministry of Agriculture on that. And finally, we believe that if we are trying to promote it, we should, as the oil company, practice what we preach. So we are in the process of taking the company off grid and creating microgrids within our facilities. And then by doing that, we're training the next set of engineers for that next step, so that when Barbados is ready, we are ready and have already started that process of microgrid technology throughout the country. So that's solar PV. Biofuels, specifically biodiesel, we view biodiesel as a critical item within our energy mix. Electric vehicles, the technology is not there for industrial vehicles. Currently doesn't exist for a lot of the heavier vehicles. And in the Barbadian context, where the average vehicle, I believe, is something like 15 years old, people are not going to get rid of the vehicles because people are asking to. So we recognize that there is going to be some need for a liquid fuel powering, that we would rather it come from renewable sources. So what we've done, we've partnered with a local producer of biodiesel who uses recycled cooking oils, producing B100, which we will then utilize for some customers as B100, which is that is already, that I believe is starting either this week or next week. Somebody sampled that is one of our rum factories is going to be using B100 in their boiler. But the intent is to also have B10 and B20 utilized for industrial vehicles. We are converting our fleet to B20, our fleet of heavy equipment at the oil company to B20, so that we will have data to prove that yes, it affects the efficiency of the vehicles to this extent, and have hard data to prove what we're saying. In the future, we are going to, we're looking at E10. We have not implemented it as yet, but we're looking at that. And for the biogas, we also have a collaboration and a partnership, signed partnership with the University of the West Indies to utilize sargassum, which is the bane of a lot of the tourism-driven islands around the Caribbean right now, to use sargassum in the creation of biogas. That facility is going to be built this year, and it's a test facility, small, and it's going to power, I believe, about 5 or 6 vehicles affiliated with the University of West Indies. But we're providing the infrastructure and the know-how for them to implement that. And what do we do finally is we're not stopping there because it's going to be a continuum. Onshore wind and offshore wind, we are also facilitating. We've brought in the equipment to do the commercial grade wind studies that we're going to provide for the country. We intend to utilize it. It is compatible with our activities in the oil field as well as in the agricultural sector. So we fully intend to put wind turbines in amongst our oil field as well. The cost is for the offshore, at least, is what we're hoping the technology reaches a point that it is scalable and feasible for our small island state. But we believe that is where a large part of our renewable thrust is going to come from. It has to come from wind. We don't have the land space required for the PV, so we believe wind is the future for that. But we also have an eye on the technology advancements that are being made in green energy, in green hydrogen. Especially as it relates to offshore. Potentially you can have blue hydrogen coming out of the natural gas. That is one context of that, but there's also the green hydrogen. And we intend, and as has been done in the Europe and the UK market, to blend it with the natural gas, because we will then utilize the existing infrastructure on island to further reduce the footprint, the GHG footprint of the nation. All right? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Catlin, for that wonderful eye-opener of what the oil company is doing. And I can see you're moving towards your carbon neutrality. You're using repurposing some products of the petroleum sector and using them for other purposes. Just to point out, audience, for those, he didn't mention, but the B10 biodiesel blend is actually using an ASTM international standard, for which you guys are making the blend and having it tested. So there's standards and conformity assessment being used there. And I like the idea of the sargassum biogas pilot plant. So we'll see how that goes. At this time, we'll now open the floor. For those who are with us virtually, you can type your questions in the chat. And for those in the audience, if you have any questions for the panel, and those who went before, Mr. Bell, I don't see Mr. Simpri, and the others who were on the platform before, if you have any questions, please, you can raise your flags or put your question in the chat. Okay, I don't see any flags, but I do have a question. With respect to, and it's just for my understanding, you pointed out that the rum distillery is going to use some of the waste oil and so on for, and I imagine this is cogeneration, they're using it to generate heat for their production processes. You didn't go into a lot of detail besides that one, but what is the other waste used oil, what is it being redirected to do in your processes at the oil company?
Just to clarify, the rum distillery will be using the B100, so not necessarily used oil. Another rum distillery previously did consume used oil for their boilers, but I believe they stopped that process to meet their own environmental goals. So in an effort to reduce their greenhouse footprint, their greenhouse gas footprint, they have in fact stopped utilizing used oil, which was a problem there for the nation because that was one of the ways of getting rid of the nation's used oil. So we then stepped in to answer the second part of your question, and we are utilizing it in our crude. So we're mixing it in with our crude and dosing it in and sending it overseas for refining. but we also have to do testing and whatnot to verify the quality of the user. I know that sounds strange, to verify the quality of the waste product, but that we do in fact have to do that because we don't want to contaminate our crude with something that would affect us.
And I see where that is going. So, okay, I will leave it there where it is. If you don't have any questions, ladies and gentlemen, we will very quickly come to an end to this session so we can meet our timeline goals. But I want to thank you both for what you've done in giving your presentations, to see how all of these activities and actions that you're doing will help us to reduce emissions, to reduce our greenhouse gas contributions, and the effect that it has on your business model, on industries and stakeholders that you serve. And we look forward to hearing more from you in the future. Okay, any final opportunity? This is the final opportunity for questions before we close off, and I will point it to you what our next steps will look like. Are there any questions from the audience? Yes, Corey.
Okay, there's a question in the chat from Ms. Lynette Holder. Will the BNOCL consider providing energy to neighboring businesses or homes when it becomes self-sustaining?
That is actually something we have thought about as part of our ESG. The issue is whether we will have the capacity. So that's something that we're working from a technical point of view, and then whether or not the grid will allow it. Currently, Barbadian grid does not permit wheeling, which is something that would require you getting your power not from the national supplier, but from a third party. So that is, I do not think it is currently allowed under the rules of Barbados.
Yeah, the Electricity Act doesn't allow, it only allows the utility to provide electricity on a commercial basis. So therefore, that is not a service you can provide, we understand. But yeah, and when he mentioned they've had about 6.7 megawatts of PV installed, but you're only feeding 1.9 into the grid, that's because the permitting process right now is a bit overburdened, and you have the capacity, but you're waiting for the permits and licenses to be given so you can actually feed that into the grid. Okay, great. All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. I want to thank all of my previous panelists from before who came and did such a wonderful job. Mr. Fulton Simpri, Mr. David Bell, Corey Aguino, all of you, Mr. Trejo, Mr. Catlin, and Mr. Damian Prescott, who was also here. Thank you very much for your presentations. You may not have realized, but what we've done over the course of the day is to take copious notes. We have someone who is taking all of the significant contributions and presentations. And we expect that coming out of this workshop, there will be some document. I can't tell you what format that document will take, but there will be likely some document that will point out what we believe were the significant contributions and highlights of the workshop. And we will hopefully through the Copant Secretariat make that available for you for further comment and discussion that may lead to any type of activity or direction or programming. So I will wrap up now by saying, on behalf of the Barbados National Standards Institution, thank you very much, delegates, for being here. Thank you very much, persons, for being online in supporting our climate change workshop. And we look forward to seeing you at another event that we have. And for next year, Copant 2024, I hope you will have a successful meeting in Brazil. At this time, I don't know if Corey, there's any last final words that you want to say on behalf of Copant? No? Any final words on behalf of the management of BNSI, Mr. Ryan, that you wish to say? No? I just did it. Oh, great. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. This brings a conclusion to our workshop. And what will happen next, I'll give one final instruction before we go. Jonathan, I'm not giving you work, don't worry. I just want to say thanks also to all of the staff and administration and the secretariat here, BNSI Secretariat, who did a wonderful job in printing your documents, in making some of your lives a little easier with some facilitation and administration. We thank you for that. They also contributed significantly to the success of this workshop, and we can't say thank you enough to the staff who've put in such a tremendous effort. So we can give them a rousing round of applause. Okay, so this brings a conclusion to our workshop. Just one final instruction for those who are joining us on Experience Barbados, which is the cultural tour. The buses will be here at 3 p.m., so we ask that you make yourselves available at the front door of the conference center, where we will board 2 buses. I would advise that you take with you a bottle of water from your table before you. Take a bottle of water with you. If you have alternate footwear, you can change yourself into some comfortable footwear as well. We will store your valuables, laptops and bags in another location. As you exit the conference door, the staff will point out to you where the storage room is, where we will lock your stuff away. The tour will commence at 3 p.m. and we will be back here by 7 p.m. The buses are scheduled to take you back to your hotel at 7:30. So on return from the tour, you'll have time to take a washroom break, to refresh, and to gather your things in half an hour when the buses return at 7:30 p.m. So I think that is the instruction for the tour. So I look forward to seeing you shortly in the next 15-20 minutes, where we will have the cultural tour of Barbados. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.